The morning after Ethan's funeral, the house felt different in a way Maya couldn't explain. It wasn't just quiet. It felt emptied of something invisible, like the walls themselves had forgotten how to hold warmth. People had come and gone for days, speaking in soft voices, placing hands on her shoulders, telling her to be strong. But strength felt like a language she no longer understood. When the last visitor finally left, Maya stood in the middle of their bedroom for a long time without moving. Ethan's side of the bed was still untouched. The pillow still carried a faint trace of his scent, something so ordinary it hurt more than anything else. She sat down slowly, as though the weight of her body was too much to carry, and for the first time since the accident, she allowed herself to cry without restraint. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet collapse into the emptiness beside her. She didn't know how long she stayed like that before sleep eventually took her on the floor. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains in thin lines, landing across the bed like something delicate and cruel. Maya woke with swollen eyes and a heaviness in her chest that hadn't eased. Grief didn't feel like waves anymore. Felt like permanence. She told herself she needed to do something, anything. Sitting still was starting to feel like drowning. That was how she found herself opening Ethan's closet for the first time since his death. His clothes were still neatly arranged. Shirts he wore to work. Jackets she had teased him for never throwing away. The smell of him lingered faintly, and she pressed her fingers against one of his sweaters longer than she intended, as if touching fabric could somehow bring back a person. She began folding things slowly, thinking she might donate some of them later. It felt like a small step toward accepting what had happened. But halfway through, her hand brushed against something unusual at the back of the closet. A small wooden box, hidden behind stacked clothes. Her breath caught for reasons she didn't understand yet. She pulled it out carefully and sat on the floor again. The box wasn't locked. Inside was an envelope placed neatly on top of folded paper. Her name was written on it in Ethan's handwriting. For a moment she just stared at it. Something about it felt wrong. Final. Like a door she wasn't supposed to open. Her fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. "If you're reading this," I lied. Her heart stopped for a second before it started beating too fast. She pressed a hand to her chest without realizing it and forced herself to continue reading. "Maya, if you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to tell you the truth while I was alive." Her vision blurred slightly. She blinked hard. "Loving you was the best thing that ever happened to me." A sob rose in her throat, confusing her. Why would he write something like this? Then she reached the next line. "The accident that killed me wasn't actually an accident." The world around her tilted slightly. "Oh." She read it again, slower this time, hoping she had misunderstood. "The accident that killed me wasn't actually an accident." Her hands began to shake so violently the paper rustled uncontrollably. Ethan explained in the letter that for almost a year before his death, someone had been watching him. Not casually. Not in a paranoid way. He had first noticed small things that didn't make sense. A car parked too often near his workplace. Missed calls from unknown numbers that never left voicemails. Messages that appeared and disappeared before he could fully trace them. First he thought it was random. Then it became consistent. Then it became personal. He wrote that the threats didn't mention money at first. They mentioned Maya. That was when fear replaced confusion. Maya felt her stomach tighten as she read further. Ethan had tried to keep it from her. Every time he wanted to tell her, something stopped him. Either a warning message or a sudden disappearance of evidence that made him doubt whether he could even trust what he was seeing. Then came the part that made her sit up completely. "Everything started the day I discovered who your real father was." Her eyes froze on the line. She read it again. What did that mean? Her father had died when she was young. That was what her mother had always told her. There were no details, no photos. Only a vague story about a man who left and never returned. It had always been a closed subject in their home. Ethan's letter suggested something entirely different. He wrote that while handling documents at work, He had accidentally come across a set of legal files tied to a private estate transfer case involving Maya's family name. It wasn't something he was supposed to see. But once he did, it pulled him into something deeper than he ever expected. According to the files, Maya's biological father wasn't missing. He was alive, and extremely wealthy. But more importantly, connected to people who did not want that information exposed. Maya stood up abruptly, pacing the room as if movement could steady her thoughts. This didn't feel real. Couldn't be real. But Ethan didn't joke. He never wrote things like this without reason. The letter continued. He explained that the more he looked into it, the more dangerous it became. Someone had begun monitoring his movements. He had found signs that his phone was being tracked, his emails accessed. Even conversations he had in person seemed to be anticipated before they happened. Then came the warning phase. Stop looking. She belongs to the past. Leave it alone or she suffers for it. Maya felt her throat tighten. Suffer for it. Was that why he died? Ethan wrote that he never told her because he believed speaking about it would only make her a target. He thought if he handled it quietly, he could protect her without dragging her into it. But he admitted he was wrong. Because silence didn't protect anyone. It only delayed the damage. Her hands tightened around the letter as she continued reading. He wrote that the night before his death, he had finally decided to meet someone who claimed to have answers. A person who said they could reveal everything about Maya's father, her family history, and why she had been hidden from that side of her life. He never made it to that meeting. The next part was harder to read. He said his brakes had failed on the way home. But he also said something else. That he had checked the car himself earlier that day. And everything had been fine. Maya felt cold all over. He believed someone had tampered with it afterward. And whoever did it didn't want him arriving at that meeting alive. Her knees weakened slightly, and she sat back down slowly, gripping the edge of the box. The letter ended with something that made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. I am sorry I didn't tell you while I was still here. I thought I had more time. I thought I was strong enough to fix everything first. But I was wrong. If anything happens to me, don't let this end with me. You deserve the truth, even if it destroys everything you thought you knew. There was more inside the box. Flash drive. Her fingers hovered over it for a long time before she finally plugged it into her laptop. A single audio file appeared. She clicked it. Ethan's voice filled the room instantly. It was soft, tired, but unmistakably his. If you're hearing this, then I didn't make it back. Maya pressed a hand to her mouth. He continued, explaining things she already knew now, but hearing them made it worse. The fear in his voice was subtle but real, like someone trying not to break while speaking. He apologized, repeated her name several times, then paused for a long time before saying something that made her cry harder than she had since the funeral. In every lifetime I would still choose you. The audio ended. Maya didn't move for a long time. The room felt too quiet again, but this time it wasn't emptiness she felt. It was something heavier. Questions. Too many of them. Who had been watching him? Who had wanted her hidden past to stay buried? And most terrifying of all, what exactly had she married into without ever knowing? 3 days later, Maya finally gathered the courage to speak to her mother. She didn't mention the letter at first. She only asked questions carefully, watching reactions more than answers. Her mother tried to avoid them. Until Maya said Ethan's name. That was when everything changed. Her mother went silent. Then she sat down slowly, as if her legs could no longer support her. And for the first time in Maya's life, she saw fear in her mother's eyes. Not grief, not sadness, fear. The kind that comes from something unfinished. Her mother finally whispered that Ethan had been asking questions before he died. Dangerous questions. About people her mother thought she had escaped from long ago. People who were not supposed to find them again. People who had already tried once to erase their past. Maya felt her chest tighten. So Ethan hadn't died randomly. He had been pulled into something that was already alive long before he ever touched it. And now it had reached her. That night Maya couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, holding Ethan's hoodie close to her chest, listening to the rain hit the glass in slow, uneven rhythms. For the first time since his death, her grief shifted into something else. Not just pain, but awareness. Because somewhere between love and loss, she had realized something terrifying. Ethan hadn't just left her behind. He had left her with a truth someone had tried very hard to keep buried.
And that is where this story ends. If it stayed with you, moved you, made you think, or reminded you of someone you know, that is exactly why these stories get told. There are more of them coming, and each one carries a truth worth hearing. If you want to be here when they arrive, subscribing and turning on your notifications means you will never miss one. A like also lets us know this story found the right person. Thank you for watching it through to the end. Until next time.